Welcome back to another Explainer. Today, we're diving into a fascinating geopolitical shift that is unfolding right now. We're going to explore how a tiny, remote coral atoll is rapidly becoming the absolute geographic center of the India-Australia security partnership. It's this brilliant, intertwining story of geography, modern space exploration, and maritime security, all coming together in one of the most vital regions on Earth.
So let's kick things off with a question that honestly sounds a bit impossible at first glance. How does a tiny coral atoll actually secure an entire ocean? It's truly amazing how incredibly small landmasses can end up dictating massive, overarching geopolitical strategies for some of the world's largest nations.
Here is our roadmap for today. First, the geographic anchor. Second, reaching for the stars. Third, eyes on the ocean. And finally, the archipelago's synergy. Let's get right into it.
Part 1. The geographic anchor. Let's pinpoint the Cocos.
If you pull up a map of the vast Indian Ocean, you'll find this crucial territory positioned literally right smack in the middle. The Cocos, or Keeling Islands, are an Australian external territory. They sit pretty much exactly midway between the western coast of Australia and Sri Lanka, and they're actually located relatively close to the Indonesian island of Sumatra. And it's exactly this central placement that's the key to everything we are going to discuss today.
What's really wild about this is the sheer scale, or, well, the lack of it. We're talking about a network of 27 coral islands, forming 2 distinct atolls. Out of all those, only 2 of them, West Island and Home Island, are actually inhabited. The entire land area is just about 14 square kilometers. Yet, despite being this tiny and having been administered as an Australian territory since 1955, this ultra-niche real estate is absolutely invaluable to regional security.
And you know, despite their micro size, official records document quite a rich administrative history. Historically managed through various colonial outposts, these islands have actually served as a vital communications and transport link ever since the World Wars. Today, firmly under Australian administration, they're finding a highly modern 21st century strategic purpose.
Moving to Part 2, Reaching for the Stars, focusing on the Gaganyaan mission.
So at the 3rd India-Australia Annual Summit, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese dropped a pretty landmark announcement. He stated, "Australia values India as a top-tier security partner. We have agreed to commission a temporary space tracking terminal on the Cocos Keeling Islands." This single announcement was proof that the bilateral partnership between these 2 nations is reaching literal new heights, pushing their cooperation way beyond just traditional defense.
Think of the islands as a critical Earth-based node for this historic scientific advancement. Here's how it plays out step by step. First, India's space agency, ISRO, develops the Gaganyaan human spaceflight program. Second, Australia steps in to actively support this by setting up a temporary ground station right there on the Cocos Islands. And third, this specific terminal is utilized to track and support India's crew module during the mission. It is just a perfect example of how strategic geography facilitates global technological leaps.
All right, bringing it back down to Earth for Section 3, Eyes on the Ocean. Let's talk maritime surveillance.
The foundation for all this cooperation really traces back to the 2020 Mutual Logistics Support Arrangement. This agreement was a total game-changer. It enabled coordinated operations across the northern Indian Ocean and essentially paved the way for both India and Australia to actively share access to their military facilities. This completely shifted the strategic landscape, allowing both nations to project their logistical capabilities way beyond their own mainland borders.
So what does this logistics agreement actually look like in practice? Well, the airfield at Cocos is now being used as a vital staging base. We've seen visits by Indian Navy Dornier Maritime Patrol aircraft and Indian Air Force C-130 Hercules transport aircraft. More importantly, it acts as a staging point for highly advanced P-8 long-range maritime patrol aircraft. Because the islands are this crucial base for aircraft refueling, they enable a much faster operational turnaround for the military. Bottom line, you can keep your surveillance planes in the sky for much, much longer.
And why does that extended flight time matter so much? Because it allows for constant, unrelenting surveillance of critical maritime choke points, specifically the Sunda, Lombok, and Wedar Straits. These are the narrow, heavily trafficked passages where commercial shipping and naval vessels enter the Indian Ocean from Southeast Asia. By operating out of the Cocos Islands, surveillance aircraft can maintain a persistent, watchful eye right over these vital entryways.
Finally, Section 4, the archipelago synergy, or the twin pillars of security. This is where it all clicks together.
Look at the geographical balance at play here. We're comparing India's Andaman and Nicobar Islands, which act as India's northern anchor near the crucial Strait of Malacca, with the Cocos or Keeling Islands, which serve as Australia's southern anchor near Indonesia. Together, these two distinct island chains function as the twin pillars of the eastern Indian Ocean. They anchor security all the way from the north straight down to the south.
The true power here is the synergy. By using these islands as mutual staging grounds, India and Australia are throwing a massive overlapping net of surveillance and logistical support over the region. Together, they cover the major entry and exit points of the Indian and Pacific Oceans. They act as stepping stones for deeper power projection. They are an incredible force multiplier for coordinated maritime domain awareness. Just imagine surveillance aircraft flying between these northern and southern anchors, sharing data in real time. And crucially, they support vital joint efforts in search and rescue and disaster response across a vast and often unpredictable ocean.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final thought. How will this island diplomacy continue to shape the balance of power in the Indo-Pacific moving forward? The strategic synergy of these tiny archipelagos will absolutely dictate the future security of our oceans. It's just an incredibly powerful reminder that sometimes the most massive shifts in global strategy pivot on the smallest pieces of land. Thank you so much for joining me today.